Hello, I'm Barry Aycock, your host of In the Arena. I'm joined today by a prosecuting attorney from Stoddard County, Sawyer Smith. Sawyer, welcome back to In the Arena.
Thank you, Barry. Good to be here again.
Sawyer, it's been about a year since your historic win over the incumbent in the Republican primary there in Stoddard County back in 22. Tell us how you've kind of settled into the job as prosecutor.
Thank you. Well, I think I've settled just fine. Things are going well in Bloomfield. We've been making the changes that we talked about during last year's campaign, and I'm really glad to be there, blessed to be there with great people. I have an awesome team. We're making the changes, working close with our law enforcement. I'm doing the job full time. And we're making smaller changes, like taking our office from paper filing system to electronic, increases our office efficiency. So things are going well. I really like the job, all aspects of the job, and I'm sure we've got a lot to talk about, and I'll save some of it for your next questions.
Well, anytime you go into a new job or new position, there's challenges, excitement. Maybe there's some of it's not that exciting, but what surprised you about the job that you didn't know was going to happen?
Well, truly, very little has surprised me. I think that I knew what I was getting into and what to expect, but there have been a few things. One is the astonishing amount of cases that were left pending that I needed to address when I started in January. It shocked me a little bit how many were change of venue cases at the request of defense attorneys to go to Cape County or Dunklin County or New Madrid County or Butler County. We're all over the boot hill cleaning up cases, and so that did surprise me a little bit. Sadly and unfortunately, the number of child sex cases in our county surprised me. I knew that there were some, but it's really disappointing how many, and that's my highest priority, I think, is fighting against those. There's been a couple things surprise me, but not very much.
So Sawyer, tell us a little bit about the crime in Stoddard County. What are the top 5 crimes that occur in Stoddard County?
Well, we see drug crimes every day, every week, just about. So we're addressing those. We're fighting crimes that stem from drug abuse, property crimes, domestic violence. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of violent crime in our county. And again, reiterate the amount of sex crimes that there are in Stoddard County against adults and children specifically. It's a lot more than people would know or think, and we're really focused on beating that back and trying to make a difference in that area of crime. I don't know, there's so many different types of crime, traffic crime, we see DWIs, we see all sorts of things, and it's just kind of what happens the weekend before or the day before, and so we're very reactive prosecutor's office. We react to the crimes that occur, and we make our policies proactive to try to prevent crime. But we're just dealing with it a day at a time and focused on cleaning up the cases that have been pending. Really, there have been cases filed in Stoddard County that have lasted 1, 2, 3, even as long as 5 or 6 years. And so we have child victims that are now teenagers and families that have been waiting on justice and haven't gotten it yet. So I'm trying to push things as fast as I can. But
what's the root cause of those inefficiencies? Is it just the system keeps continuing those cases? More information comes in about them? What's causing the inefficiency in the court system?
Well, COVID had a lot to do with it a few years back. It bottlenecked our cases, really not just here in Stoddard County, but everywhere. But what I think is the answer is that for a long time, the Stoddard County Prosecutor's Office has not been staffed or modernized the way that it should have been, and I'm taking every step that I can to make it so. What I mean is that we're the only full-time jurisdiction in the boot hill that has less than 3 attorneys and less than 2 legal assistants, yet we're still facing a similar amount of cases as other counties. And so we need to continue our efforts to make it a robust prosecutor staff. We're very capable of doing the job, and we'll get into this, but I've taken some measures to get a 3rd attorney on board, specifically focused on fighting these child sex cases, because those are very time-consuming, very complex litigation matters. And you know, when you have a child sex case, most of the time it's your victim witness's testimony against the testimony of the defendant, which of course they don't have to testify. So those are hard cases to make. You never usually have physical evidence or biological evidence, and you have to really work hard on those cases, and that requires a lot of time. And dealing with all that we've talked about, you need more attorneys, you need more staff, and you may ask about some of that, so I'll save a little bit to talk about. But
I'm sure over your career, the next 4, 8, 12 years, however long you decide to be prosecutor, you'll see some unique cases. But in your first year, have you seen any like blue-collar crime, anything that you thought going into the job would be not going on in Stoddard County?
What we started out doing when I took office in January was there was 8 or so homicide cases pending, and we've resolved about 4 of those already. And one of them by jury trial that lasted 3 days in Dunklin County back in March. And we came out and convicted the defendant of murder and a few other felonies. And it was a really special case to me. I had been in school with the victim that was murdered. That case had been pending for years. The family had been waiting and waiting for justice, and we were able to earn it for the family. And at play was the castle doctrine defense, which, as you know, in this part of the state is a hard defense. It's hard to overcome that. I very much believe in self-defense and home defense, but in this case, he was not legally entitled to that benefit, and we proved it to all 12 jurors who deliberated only for a few hours and found him guilty. So that was an important case, State versus Melvin Anderson. And so addressing these violent homicide cases has been a big focus of mine. I think in the fall and winter, we're going to get more into the child sex cases we talked about. And every day we're dealing with the drug and property crimes and that you were asking of. And
yeah, and that's one thing people don't realize, Sawyer. It's not just showing up and being at the trial. It takes hours and hours of prep to go into these cases, correct?
It really does.
Explain a little bit about that.
Well, specifically for a trial, you're
Yes.
talking weeks, if not months, of preparation, and in fairness, sometimes a year or two of discovery phase and investigating the case and making sure that everybody's ready to proceed to a trial if the case does need to proceed to a trial. A very small percentage of cases go to jury trial, but it's important for several reasons that you can show you can try a case and you can win a case. It's sort of a poker game. If they're not going to accept your plea bargain unless they know you can prove your case. And it's much harder for a prosecutor to do because you have to convince all 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt versus being a defense attorney and just having to have one juror that says not guilty and you have a hung jury. And
yes, and if you're not well prepped, the criminal's looking for that one little technicality to get off the hook. Right?
That's right. You have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's and be very prepared for directing the witnesses that the state puts on as evidence, cross-examining potential defense witnesses. We used an expert witness in our murder trial. There's a ton of preparation that goes into organizing and evaluating your evidence, the facts of the case. Of course, it all starts with the investigation and working close with the law enforcement so that you are getting the right facts and obtaining the evidence in the right way and going about those things properly and constitutionally. But from the inception of a case to the day the jury returns its verdict, it's hard to tell all that goes into it.
It's hours and hours. The part you see on the TV and the movies is just the trial, the cool part, right?
Hollywood is very different than Bloomfield.
Well, Sawyer, you recently hosted a meeting of law enforcement from the 35th Judicial Circuit with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. I got to watch a few clips of that last night. I was very impressed with Andrew Bailey. I haven't really got to ever see him speak, and he seemed to be well-versed on the state of Missouri and the laws that surround us here. But Sheriff Holder and Sheriff Hefner joined you. How did that come about?
That was a great meeting, and Andrew Bailey, I think, is a great Attorney General. He's been a former prosecutor, so he has a great understanding of the challenges we face or that arise in criminal matters. And he's going around the state meeting with prosecutors and law enforcement to strengthen those relationships and talk to us about what's important. And I've had a personal friendship with Andrew Bailey. It was not hard to get him to come to Bloomfield, which I greatly appreciated and thought was wonderful. In fact, I think it's an unprecedented meeting in that I don't remember an Attorney General before coming to Stoddard County. I think a lot of Eric Schmidt and Josh Hawley both, but Andrew Bailey has been there to talk to us and Sheriff, and we had a wonderful meeting outlining our relationship. We don't work with them often, but when when necessary and important, we're in touch, and he's easy to make request of and respond to, such as conflict cases. When I have a personal conflict in a criminal case and I can't proceed, and every other prosecutor in the Boot Hill is just covered up with their caseload, the Attorney General's office and their resources are there to step in and help. And so I commend Andrew Bailey for that. Our meeting took place at the prosecutor's office in Bloomfield. We had all of our law enforcement department heads there, and the media was there, so it was a nice event.
And so you kind of hit the nail on the head. Most of public service is just showing up and being interested, right? And a lot of our politicians don't get that, especially our statewide politicians. They just stay in Jeff City all the time. But yes, Andrew Bailey's out kind of meeting the people, and criminal justice is kind of his thing, and he's making the rounds.
He's also a war hero. He's fought for our country and our Constitution, and I just think it's wonderful to have a person in the Attorney General's office like him that will stand up for our laws, and he's got fight in him, that's for sure.
You've got a direct line to him that'll pay off for the citizens of Stoddard County and Southeast Missouri. Well, let's move on, Sawyer. I understand that your office has been awarded a grant for a special assistant prosecutor to prosecute child sexual abuse cases. Who is funding that grant? How many child sex abuse cases do you have filed at any one time?
I'm glad you asked me about this. It's very important. It's been a focus of mine since taking office, of kind of going back to your previous question of how do we address some things and what's important, and that is creating a very robust staff with a third attorney in Stoddard County.
That's one thing you told me, Sawyer, on day one, is you're understaffed from day one.
From day one.
This is kind of a savior for you a little bit here, right?
Yes. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I'm completely capable of the job. Leanne Ryan, my first assistant, very good prosecutor, but we're dealing with over 1,000 cases, so we have to look at it practically and economically. And
that seems like when you walk in, it's just a gigantic mountain that you're looking at when you walk in every day.
Every day we're climbing mountains, and this position that we're talking about, I call it SAPA, Special Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. My initial step was to go to the Law Enforcement Restitution Board of Stoddard County and convince them of this need, and ultimately I did. They voted to give me financial support to go out and hire the prosecutor part-time that we needed, and that was a temporary solution until we knew about this grant. And I took steps to apply for the grant and go through Jeff City, and we've been awarded the funding. The money hasn't arrived yet, but we are going to receive this very important grant for specifically supporting the prosecution of child sex cases. It's through the Missouri Department of Social Services, and the only negative about it is that it runs out in a year. And so I'm already thinking about what are we going to do when this money's used up, and I'm going to ask the county commission to make it a full-time position. I believe it's one of the most important things the commission could do for the prosecutor's office. And I think we have wonderful commissioners, very astute and business savvy, and understand money, and they're saving the taxpayers where they need to save. But when it comes to law enforcement, of course, we need to do what is necessary, and I'm going to call on them to make this job full-time. And I'm going to show them the results of having this SAPA for a year and the difference that it makes in the amount of cases that we file and the amount of cases that we try and the justice that we accomplish for victims of these child abuse cases, and just the positive results. It's going to be a very good thing for the citizens of Stoddard.
How much is the grant?
The grand sum of the grand total of the grant is $100,000. That's not a salary. The salary is included in that, but there's also line items that were appropriated for equipment and training and things like that. It breaks down a little bit intricately. So,
when did you get this grant?
I received a notice a week or two ago that we would be awarded the money. Our agreement with LERF took effect in July, really, and it's good to go until December. So we've got until December for those funds to arrive, and I'm sure that they will. And at which point they do arrive and the third prosecutor begins receiving those funds, and it's Mr. Rance Butler. He's been in the office before as a prosecutor. Rance is a very good attorney. I'm proud to have him on our staff. And we'll start the clock, and so a year from then the funds will run out. It's going to be interesting. There's a commissioner's election next year too. So I hope that whoever runs will hear what I'm saying about how important this is to law and order in Stoddard County.
Well, Stoddard County's fortunate. They got some good business people as commissioners, like you said. So
Greg Mathis doing a very good job. C.D. Stewart, Carol Jarrell, I get along great with all three of them.
as long as you show them how it's really enhancing Stoddard County protection, I'm sure that they'll go along with it. Well, Sawyer, how many people work in the Stoddard County Prosecutor's Office? And what do they all do? You just talked about Rance, what he's going to be doing in the future. He's probably already doing it. Everybody's doing everything there.
Sure. When I started, we had 6. Now we have 8, soon to be 7. So I'll break that down. We have our first assistant prosecutor, Leanne Ryan, our investigator, Justin Allen. He was the former chief of police in Bernie, and Justin's been super helpful and important to our office. We have a victim advocate, Christy Patterson, who I kept from previous administration. A new child support officer, Megan Williams. We have an office manager, Brittany Burks. And we have an intern, Kirsten Kersey. She's a law student at SIU. And so it was great to get her on board, helping us out this summer. That's why I say we're getting ready to be 7, because she's 8 and going back to school. But Rance Butler, with him working in our office, makes the SAPA position. So we have a very robust office. It's the most robust, I think, in Stoddard's history. You know, it used to be a part-time jurisdiction, then it became full-time. We're finally starting to see adequate staff, but we need to make sure that it stays that way.
I've heard great things about Leanne Ryan. I heard she hit the ground running, and she's been an asset to Stoddard County. And my good friend Justin, I heard he's doing a great job for you. But how are you going to retain all this talent? Do you have a plan in place to retain these people?
Well, I'll do everything I can to make sure they're happy and enjoying work. And certainly we've got a team approach up there. It's not about me. It's not about any one person. We're very much a team. We look at things with that mindset. But I think it is important that in these important positions we're paying adequately, and I think the commission wants to address that. And it's a competitive employment market out there, and so to get the right people, to get the best people, which I have and want to keep, we need to make sure that the commission is raising the hourly wages of some, and we do have good benefits, I will say that. And so I think those are important things a little bit outside my control, but that I would ask for, because we do, to your point, want to keep who we've got. It's making a real difference.
Yeah, retaining talent's important to the future of Stoddard County in general, so I hope you can keep all these people, because they are talented people, and you've kind of got an all-star team put together there.
I do. We worked hard to have it.
But that brings me to another question. Do you meet with the county commission regularly, or is that something the prosecutor does?
Anytime they request me to come to a meeting, I'm there. I've had requests of them. They've all been great about getting together with me. I try to focus on my job and stay out of the politics that sometimes exist with all the offices. But the county commission, I think, is just taking care of business. Of course, there was some turnover there. We had a presiding commissioner retire, and then an associate commissioner appointed by the governor. And so there's been a lot of changes across the hall from my office, and I'm just there to support them any way I can. They've recently brought a civil matter to me relating to the generator at the sheriff's office, and there's the construction of the new jail, and there's a contractual issue with the generator, and so I'm looking at litigating that. It's part of my role to be the county counselor, so I promised I would do that.
Well, you told me you was modernizing the office, the prosecutor's office. What other expectations do you have in the prosecutor's office there in Stoddard County moving forward?
Going back to another question you asked me about what surprised me, one of the things is that not as many attorneys have wanted to have jury trials. I've tried. That's why I became an attorney in the first place, was to be in the courtroom all the time, which I am, but in the trial setting, what I expect is that we'll have more trials. It's what I hope for anyway. I think after we came out in March and won the murder case, it really set the tone early on that we can back up everything we've talked about.
So they're wanting to plea bargain every time? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that doesn't mean that I'm just making soft plea bargains to them. I'm sending a lot of people to prison via plea bargain. They're not facing the maximum in a plea agreement, but they're certainly getting what I feel and think is an adequate punishment or an adequate disposition to the case. And so we've had cases set for trial through the spring, the summer, and they're all showing up and wanting to take pleas. So they've been removed from trial setting, but don't get me wrong, we're going to have plenty of trials. I'm sure there are some that are just waiting for theirs to come around on the calendar. but we'll be ready for them.
That's a good question for a prosecutor. A plea bargain is not really letting anybody off the hook.
Right.
You're getting back to, you really come in overwhelmed by cases, so it's more of an efficiency thing, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, a very small percentage of cases actually go to jury trial. If you think about it, it's not practical. It takes the public coming in to be the jury pool. It's the resources spent by the county to have it happen. You take up a courtroom for an entire day, sometimes an entire week. You can't have a jury trial in every single criminal case, so you have to use the plea bargain as a tool to keep the wheels of justice turning slowly, although we're trying to make them faster. And so, but yes, plea bargain has a bad connotation to it. It implies that somebody's getting a deal. I suppose that it's an agreement by both sides, but usually that agreement is they're going to become a convicted felon or go to prison or at least be on probation and have special terms of that probation. We fine defendants. We make certain people complete anger management courses, driving improvement courses, victim impact panel, batterers intervention program, supervised probation. If they need counseling, they need to meet with a probation officer, all of those things. And then of course, if you do earn a conviction of a felony on your record, that takes away certain rights that you have to own a gun, to vote, important rights that can be restored in certain cases, but not always. And then prison is, nobody wants to go to prison, but sometimes they have to. So,
Well, Sawyer, thank you for joining us today. Sounds like there's exciting times. The county's in great hands. They know you're clocking into work every day, working for the citizens of Stoddard County. But I'll let you have the last word. Is there anything you'd like to say to the citizens of Stoddard or Southeast Missouri?
I just want to thank them again. They put me in this position and placed a lot of trust in me. I don't take that lightly at all. My promise to seek justice and pursue justice for all is renewed every day. That's my mission. I'm very thankful to the citizens. At the end of the day, I'm a public employee. I'm a servant of them and the Constitution, and I mean it, and I hope they know that. If there's anything I can do to serve or assist them, I hope they'll reach out. I've worked hard to improve the transparency of our office. You can follow us on Facebook. We're working on a website. That's another change that it's coming. I think all government offices should have a website. So we're doing that, and encourage them to call, reach out. We're very busy. If we don't get in touch right away, just be patient. We will be in touch eventually. But again, I thank them and I thank you.
Well, thank you for being here today. Your tagline in your campaign, Justice for All, that's really carried you through this year, because I feel like you've served the citizens of Stoddard County well. So
Appreciate that, Barry.
thank you for joining us today. Sawyer Smith, prosecuting attorney for Stoddard County, and thank you once again for joining us on In the Arena.